Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time to look at the wide receiver sleepers for this season. If you did not catch it previously, earlier on in this week, I released my tiered ranking video for the wide receivers, for the 2024 fantasy football season. We're getting into the groove here, and later on this week, this should be the Wednesday release. So then on Friday, I will release my busts video. We're early on in the season. Things may and will change, and if I get a chance, I'll kind of recap these things again prior to draft time. But we're gonna get this over with early in the season, this portion of it. If you want to see the actual rankings, you can go up on my website, www.theFFforge.com. There's a link down in the description to my current rankings. As of right now, I kind of have those in a freeze mode while I release these videos, and then I'll start to be able to adjust them again. And at the bottom of the rankings, you can see the last date that they were updated. Now, in this sleeper video, I do want to make it very clear what the definition of a sleeper is so that you understand where I'm coming from. A player who is not being valued properly in the fantasy football community, ... There is a little bit more to this definition, which basically comes down to often, but not always, that refers to late round draft picks. I'm of the camp of not always. Look, if a guy is ranked 10th at his position, is getting taken in the third round, and I have him as my number one wide receiver, let's say, and so I think he could be taken first overall instead of in the third round. To me, that's a sleeper. I don't care that he's being taken in the third round and not in the sixth round. So that's where my definition comes from. A lot of these guys are going to be later round guys, especially at the wide receiver position for like the first 40-ish players. I'm not too far off from the ECR, the Expert Consensus Ranking from Fantasy Pros website. Without further ado, there are going to be a couple of announcements at the end of the video. Like, for instance, if you want to get involved in maybe a listeners league, pay attention at the end of the video for that kind of stuff. But let's get on to my top 10 sleepers for the wide receiver position of the 2024 NFL Fantasy Draft season. And welcome back. Here we are with my number 11. So there are actually 11 players in here. It's not always going to be exact, but we like round numbers when we're doing lists. So top 10 sleepers, starting off with number 11, is going to be Jalen Tolbert. Actually, maybe it is Tolbert. I don't know. But he is my wide receiver 77, as you can see on the screen there, which means that I am 45 spots higher on him than the average expert, the ECR, the expert ranking. That is 124 is what the ECR was as of the time that I gathered that information and compared it to my list. This is the heart of how I figured out these sleepers, and they're also going to be not necessarily in order of what I think is like the most important sleeper or anything like that. But it's more so in order of how I have them. The highest ranked will be, the number one, for the most part. Jalen Tolbert, New York Giants. That is wrong. He is a Cowboys wide receiver in his third year, so we're looking for that third-year breakout. He's going to get an opportunity. One of the knocks on that, of course, is the fact that he didn't earn that opportunity earlier. I don't think that especially that third wide receiver spot has necessarily been on a lockdown these last couple of years. They've kind of struggled at that third wide receiver. Not that Gallup hasn't been a talented wide receiver in his career, but injuries and whatnot. Jalen Tolbert wasn't able to win the position. He is Dak Prescott's number 3 wide receiver, however. He's going to be, Dak Prescott's a good quarterback, okay? He can produce some fantasy relevant guys. He is 100% a sleeper if you're going to be ranking him 124th overall. He will not remain ranked that low all offseason, I don't believe. I think as news comes out, things in the offseason, I think that he'll end up higher than 124. Will he end up as high as 77? Maybe, probably not. But I think he's somebody to keep our eyes on, given the fact that Brandon Cook didn't necessarily take advantage of his opportunity as the number 2 wide receiver last year, but where he'll be again this season. So unless somebody else wins this job, Tolbert is somebody who I am definitely thinking about later on in the draft, at least flyer-wise. Then we have my number 10 of the top 10 list here, and that is going to go to Kendrick Bourne. That is how it is. Let's go on to my number 9 wide receiver. That is my wide receiver 72, Charlie Jones. I have him 67 spots ahead of the ECR, so definite difference of opinion here, and I totally get it. ECR and him, wide receiver 139. So I'm going to be a part of the Cincinnati Bengals offense, and I don't think that rookie wide receiver Jermaine Burton combined with Jamar Chase being in at the slot, because Jermaine Burton's not going to be in at the slot, I don't think, and T. Higgins, who's also, I don't think, going to be the guy to go into the slot, if those three guys are on the field, is the most effective use of your receivers. I think having a true slot like Charlie Jones in there is maybe slightly more efficient. You get Jamar Chase then out on the perimeter where he is the most deadly, where he's going to bring the most value to your offense. Not that he doesn't rock out of the slot, but there's just a little less efficiency that comes from slot cornerbacks overall. They're just a little bit less valuable. I do expect that Charlie Jones will end up splitting with Burton, as long as he is the guy that we thought he was in the draft. As for these wide receiver 3 duties, depending on formations, I do think that they're going to be willing to kick Jamar Chase into that slot a certain amount of time. But how much of the time, I'm not sure. And I think currently where I have Charlie Jones ranked, I'm maybe a little too optimistic about how much time he'll get on the field compared to Burton. We'll see. We'll see how things play out. I'll be reviewing my projections as well, and I'm not quite expecting Charlie Jones to hang on to this ranking, but he's somebody I definitely have my eye on, and I think is a little bit going under the radar at ECR 139 there. Let's move on to my number 8 wide receiver sleeper here. My wide receiver 68, Jalen Hyatt. I'm 12 spots higher than the ECR and him. ECR wide receiver 79. He's a second-year wide receiver, rookie last year, played for the New York Giants, will be playing for the New York Giants again, where, you know, we all know there were a lot of issues with that offense for a lot of reasons. He is a deep ball wide receiver, one of the worst offensive lines. They had trouble getting the ball deep, partially in part due to the fact that the offensive line couldn't hold up long enough for that. So everything was definitely working against Jalen Hyatt doing much as a rookie. Not to mention, he's kind of coming in as a bit of a project anyways. So second year here, it could be time to break out. Reasons that he could have the breakout. Danny Dimes, he's got to be playing with nothing to lose, right? He knows that his career, his job is on the line. I mean, he'll probably get one more opportunity as a backup even if he does poorly here. But if he wants somebody looking at him as a serious contender for a starter, to maybe get himself a decent next contract here, he's going to have to show up. And I just think that he has nothing to lose, because it's that or the dumps, really. So this is going to be a better team, a better wide receiver core, a better offensive line, everything working in tandem here to help Jalen Hyatt potentially have a good season in terms, relatively good season in terms of being a guy at the back end of your roster. Boom or bust kind of guy, but the boom weeks, it could be pretty big. He does have a lot of talent in terms of being a deep threat. So bring us on to my wide receiver 7, which is wide receiver 67 in my rankings. Demarcus Robinson, 19 spots ahead of the ECR. ECR wide receiver number 85 here for Demarcus Robinson. And via EV, last year he was wide receiver 75, so kind of somewhere right in between where I have him currently ranked and where the ECR and him was. But here's what it is. The final 6 games of last season, he really came on strong. His glow-up happened, so he averaged 4 receptions on 7 targets for 61.5 yards and 6 touchdowns through the final 6 games of last season with the Rams, where he is getting a shot here to be that same wide receiver, that the number 3 wide receiver really on this roster. That comes to over 11 and a half PPR fantasy points on average per game, given those stats, or that would be 9th overall in terms of the average fantasy points per game on the season, if you were to compare that to all the end results from last year, 2023 football season, half PPR, once again. So, am I buying him as a wide receiver 1? Well, clearly not. Got him at the wide receiver 67. But is that production worth taking a late round flyer on? chasing that production? I think it is. So, especially in best ball formats, Demarcus Robinson's 100% going to be on my radar late if I'm looking for a real, upside flyer. If I feel pretty comfortable with my starter guys, but in the event of an emergency, hey, we can toss Demarcus Robinson and we might get a pretty big game out of it. I'll take that. That's going to bring us on to my wide receiver 65, sixth here on the list, Roman Wilson, 14 spots ahead of ECR 78, wide receiver 78. So I am a pretty big fan of Roman Wilson. I admit that right off the bat. I think that he fits the need at Pittsburgh pretty well overall as well. What's working against him, however, this is going to be kind of a negative one, even though I'm trying to say, hey, I'm a fan of Roman Wilson. Basically, Roman Wilson's on the chopping block to be pushed backwards in my rankings. I'll just have to see yet again. I'll have to look at things and see who I have him ahead of that I can push him backwards. But there's a reason I'm going to be looking to get him closer here to maybe where the ECR is, and that has to do with the quarterbacks. He'll have throwing to him. If Roman Wilson, and he doesn't have to be used as a slot-only guy, but I do think that that's probably where he gets used and where he's most effective, and so he'll be running a lot of over the middle of the field routes, a lot of underneath routes, typical slot guy types of routes. And that's not really where we see either quarterback, whoever starts for Pittsburgh, whether that's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, thrive. They don't target that area of the field a whole lot, and they're also not incredibly strong at targeting that area of the field. They more attack the perimeter and deep. That's where their strengths lie. So I am hesitant about Roman Wilson, but what I am positive about is the fact that there is a lot of potential here in terms of extra target share that's left over on this roster for him to be able to pick up. So I'm just a little mixed feelings on Roman Wilson, my number 6 receiver. I know I didn't exactly sell you on him, but I'm just there's a lot of room there to pick up some slack. And just the quarterbacks throwing to him concern me. So, let me know any of your thoughts, what you've heard from other people on Roman Wilson and how that might work out for fantasy football. Be curious what people are thinking of him. Obviously, I'm a little bit high on him right now, but I could be convinced otherwise. Odell Beckham is my number 5 wide receiver here. A sleeper. I have him as my wide receiver 71. That is 28 spots ahead of ECR. ECR wide receiver 99. And I actually had him a little bit higher, and I moved them backwards after while I was going through this process. Just reviewing things because he did come up last year. He was the wide receiver 63 in terms of the EV, equalized value, which by the way is just it's a homebrewed situation here. Looking at it's a lot like average fantasy points per week. However, it takes consistency into account, and I believe I have proven multiple times on this channel that it does a better job of telling you who's going to help you win more games or who helped the team win more games. It's looking back at previous numbers, obviously consistency. So Odell Beckham, number 63 on that list, by the way, just kind of plug in the EV, equalized value system there. But it's just average fantasy points per week, consistency kind of skewed, or less skewed because consistency is a factor. As far as my projections go, of course, I run projections. Odell Beckham came up 71st in my projections, right where I have him ranking. So I think there is some upside here for OBJ to outperform that 63rd from last year. I just think there's some upside here to target in a draft much more so than being the ECR wide receiver 99. So he's going to be working out of the slot in Miami, especially when it comes to touchdowns. This could work in his favor a lot, I believe. So when we look at Miami last year, they only had 29 receiving touchdowns or passing touchdowns from Tua. Despite having one of the most explosive offenses and throwing the ball for the most yards in the entire league. That's a minimum. When I looked at things, I'd say that there is a minimum of 5 passing touchdowns that they simply left on the field due to lack of an execution here. Player personnel, scheme, whatever the actual cause of it was last year. I think multiple things. One of the answers to that is going to be Odell Beckham Jr. So I'm just penciling in 5 touchdowns for him easy. Not that that's an insane amount, but then when you look at the upside here, there were up to about 16 plus touchdowns that were left on the field. A 35 touchdown season, given how well this passing attack performed outside of getting touchdowns, would not be ridiculous. That would make sense, actually. So a lot of touchdowns to be had to get this offense to be a little bit more efficient, finishing drives, especially through the passing attack. And I think OBJ opens that up, or actually things are opened up for OBJ with Waddle and Hill working the outside most of the time. Now you've got a guy down the middle who down the center, whatever, who could really be deadly and fix those woes, and I think could end up with a lot of touchdowns this year. That's going to bring us on to my wide receiver for Demario Douglas. I'm 10 spots higher than the ECR in him. I have him ranked 58th overall, ECR 68. And via EV, equalized value, last season he finished as my wide receiver 60, so not too shabby for a rookie. And we know that Jacoby Brissett likes to throw short, plenty. And Demario Douglas could be his target of choice. And once Drake May takes over, and that he could start the lead as the season as the starting quarterback, I wouldn't be overly surprised about that. But then he could be the safety valve for Drake May. What I'm saying is Demario Douglas, I don't think it's the worst situation in the world. Slot receiver, it's not a high upside, but it should have a solid floor, especially if Jacoby Myers is in that quarterback. I feel more confident about that. But either way, for a guy like Drake May, it could be the safety blanket. I will say, though, I don't know that I trust that like Drake May utilizes his safety blanket as much as some other rookie quarterbacks might. So there is that working against Demario Douglas. Let's bring us on to my wide receiver, 55 in the rankings, 12 spots higher than him on my ECR, compared to ECR, 67, that should be right in ECR, and that is going to be Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. He also tied with Demario Douglas for EV ranking last year, 60th overall, and he is a second-year player as well. Was a rookie last year, and last year as a rookie, with all the quarterback woes surrounding him, especially early on in the season, he did quite well, and all the focus defensively really was on him. He was clearly like the X receiver last year for this wide receiving core. Once again, also quarterback situation not the best for the passing game, and it also throughout the season there was no consistency, and he had some injuries, and leading up until the point that he got injured last year, he was improving and doing well and becoming potentially fantasy relevant at that point. Just like Demario Douglas, there was a period in time where they were like the guys on the waiver wire that a lot of people were targeting, is essentially how it works. And I am expecting Michael Wilson, probably more so than Demario Douglas, and the rankings show that, to have a chance here to step up in year two and be decent as a wide receiver 3 type of guy for fantasy. So yeah, that's just how I'm looking at him. I'm a little bit higher than the experts. Now, let's bring us on to my number 2 sleeper, as you see, Tank Dell. I have him ranked 20th overall. The average expert has him ranked 31st overall. That's a difference of 11 spots there, that I am higher on Tank Dell than average. He was finished last year 17th via the equalized value, so a top 20 guy last year. Very, very good production as a rookie. Gets injured. I'm not worried about coming back from an injury this year. His broken leg, yeah. So as far as I know, pretty simple thing. I've done it myself. I know the recovery. It's not a soft tissue thing. He should be fine in terms of coming back. Health, still a concern for him. He's a smaller guy. That was one of the knocks on him in the draft process, and it came through last year. But when he's on the field, absolute stud. After week 1, he started to come through. And this wide receiver core is going to be, deadly. And here's the thing is that maybe why I could be a little bit high on him and why the experts are a little bit lower on him, I assume, is with the addition of Stephon Diggs, does Tank Dell just become way too inconsistent. But, man, I don't know. I'm probably going to get lower than him on this. But what I will say is, even if I agree with the ECR by the time that we get to draft time in a couple of months, he's maybe the guy to target in this offense between him, Stephon Diggs, just because he'll be like the third one to get taken. And there's a very decent chance that he could perform better fantasy-wise than one of Diggs or Nico Collins when all is said and done, and you get him, a couple of rounds later or something like that. Hey, that's value right there, baby. So, don't underestimate Tank Dell and his ability to come back this year. And that's going to bring us on to my number one sleeper. This is my 9th ranked wide receiver. I have him 8 spots higher than the ECR. ECR on him is 17, and that is going to be DJ Moore. Chicago Bears wide receiver, got a rookie quarterback coming in. That's, of course, the concern. But also, are we really too concerned about who's throwing to DJ Moore? Because he's got a long list of quarterbacks who have thrown to him. And I think, as far as I recall, like all but one of them produced very well for DJ Moore in fantasy. So as far as my projections go, he finished 5th for out of all the wide receivers, and there is some input from the quarterback position into that. And basically, I give rookie quarterbacks like average numbers a little bit less than average, and I knock off a little bit for the numbers that end up going into the projections. For the quarterback projections as well as some of the receiving projections for the receivers of each quarterback. Secondly, here in terms of last year, DJ Moore with Justin Fields, Tyson Bagent, whoever throwing to him at quarterback, not a very good quarterback year. He finished 14th via equalized value, still finished very well. And so that brings us to this list of other quarterbacks who have thrown to him prior to last year, which I just said, Tyson Bagent, Justin Fields, who was getting replaced here before his rookie contract's even over, and got traded for like a 6th or 7th round draft pick or whatever. We got Cam Newton, and we got Cam Newton being the best quarterback that he ever played for, and that was in DJ Moore's rookie season that he had a good Cam Newton. He gets him again in his career. He gets him part of the next year for like maybe 1 or 2 games, and then he gets him like 2 years down the road when they brought Cam back in Carolina, where he wasn't a very good quarterback. Much better as a rusher at that point in his career. So we got Cam Newton, Taylor Heineke, Will Grier. I don't know how many passes Will Grier actually threw to him, but at some point there was a Will Grier game or so in there, half a game. PJ Walker, Kyle Allen, Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, maybe the second best quarterback on that list, and he is also the one that DJ Moore did not connect with very well. That didn't work out so well for DJ Moore while Baker was quarterback. So, I mean, I'm not too pessimistic about the outcome here for DJ Moore. Top 10, top 12, might be a little bit hard to trust. I might have to push him back a little ways, but I think at wide receiver 17, he's definitely a sleeper value for you. So there we go. Those are my top 10 sleepers. Look for the bus video on Friday, and just a couple of channel announcements here before we sign off. First of all, if you become a member, I think I have the price set for like 99 cents. Become a member, and you get a password to my Discord channel. And on there, to the Discord, on there's several channels. I'm not really very familiar with Discord, but I set it up, so hopefully I'm referring to things by the right terminology. And on the Discord, there are several channels, like I said. And so here are some of the things here. First of all, I mentioned looking for people who are interested in playing in a members-only league, a listener league, and trying to fill that out. We'll see. I don't know if we get a couple people in there, we don't get enough to do a league. I'll try to think. We'll figure something out that we can do to have a little bit of fun, at least with each other. If we can't get at least an 8-man league going, I know I have a couple friends that we could probably also add in late in emergency situations. So there's that. If you become a member, there is a channel 2024 Fantasy League. Just hop in there, say that you're interested, bada bing, bada boom. And if we get too many people, then we'll have an episode where I'll do a spin a wheel for everybody who's going to be in the Fantasy League. Then there is access to equalized value, which I've referenced a couple times in this consistency rankings, so you can see those for yourself. As you prep for next year, you can see what kind of guys did consistency kind of value. On there, you can also see how well they were via average fantasy points per week, kind of see the differences. And I also did do videos earlier on in the off season that you can find on my channel, covering some of the biggest differences there. Guys to look forward to this year that, maybe might look like they did better via average fantasy points per week, or look like they did worse via that number than they actually did on the season. And during the year, you will also be able to get what I will be updating each week is the same thing, the equalized value numbers, and you will be able to see, come like week 8 or something. You want to get some more than a few weeks in there before you start to take those consistency ratings at all for any kind of value. But once we get into the half point of the season, when you're thinking about making some trades, that could also be a good list to target, to look at, and just see, oh, okay, yeah, so-and-so might be doing a little bit better than it appears they're doing. Just give you some ideas of who to trade for, who maybe not to trade for, who's maybe just had one huge game, and so now everything looks better for them than it actually has been. And last up, if you like rankings for non-PPR / standard league scoring format or full PPR scoring formats, I have a channel full PPR and a channel standard format. Hop on in there. Let me know that you're interested in getting rankings for that scoring format, and I will do my best. I will get you some rankings for those formats. Until there's any kind of demand, I'm not gonna spend my time to do that. But I do know that there's in-season demand for that. But, I need you to voice your opinion there in the Discord channel. So that is it. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to go film the bus video, and I will see you Friday with that one. Bye-bye.